Recently, we have gotten some insane allegations in the Minecraft community once again because it appears that no matter what timeline we exist in, Minecraft YouTubers are somehow always into the most shady and scummy behaviors of all time. And this time, the person being held up by pitchforks and torches would be none other than everyone's favorite soft boy comfort Minecraft YouTuber, GeorgeNotFound, with the allegations being presented by, "Man, fuck this shit. I am too late for this bullshit. The story has changed so many times at this point that I'm not even sure if George magically grew a third hand." But regardless of how late I am, I feel it is important to talk about the unreliable narrator that is Caitibugzz. We all know this person at this point. She's been the lead allegation specialist in a cancellation campaign for the past 2 weeks against none other than, as I mentioned, GeorgeNotFound. She first spearheaded this campaign by dropping a very emotionally and narrative-driven livestream on Twitch where she discussed the allegations in great details, almost to the extent of something akin to the Twilight novels or 50 Shades of Grey. And I wish I were exaggerating, but this is exactly how it comes across.
Noticing how my future was his past, and I wondered how he felt sitting so close to me.
Her intense use of loaded language, performative statements, combinations of words that feel a lot more dramatic than necessary to convey a point, and also the iconic freshly 18.
I was freshly 18.
Which will be a massive topic of discussion throughout this video. First, I want to get into Katie's allegations. To be brief, she went to a house party, keep in mind, excited that she felt grown up. She had been drinking in a country where it is legal to be drinking at the age of 18, by the way, and while at the house party interacted with George, nervous that she was around creators with huge sub counts. All of these details are important because the way she goes about presenting them, the tone, the use of language and wording, is clear that she wants to victimize herself far more than what the details at hand display.
I dread the scenarios that could have played out that night, the what ifs. I was just so naive.
On top of that, there are miscellaneous details about the situation in regards to her that would lead to any normal person to presume that she is in fact perfectly above age and perfectly capable of being responsible for her own actions. First, I want to start with narrative inconsistency. Katie in her initial statement made it clear and abundant that George knew about her age since the beginning, when in fact that was not the case at all. George didn't know about her age until after the fact. Not that it particularly matters because Katie is not a child. She is a legal adult in most countries.
And he was 8 years older than me, and far more powerful. Later that night, when I left, I received Instagram DMs from him. And in my Instagram bio, in bold, was my age, 18, confirming he knew how old I was.
This goes to show that even here, she's purposely obscuring the narrative for the sake of getting sympathy based on age dynamics, which in my honest opinion, you couldn't even apply to the situation anyways, because these two people didn't even know each other long enough for there to be any argument about power dynamics, which is something that is brought up a fuck ton. You see, power dynamics in the way that they're critical in cases of manipulation are critical because of someone's ability to personally affect your life using their status or hierarchy over you. This simply isn't possible in this case because 1, they're not in a setting where someone is coercing an individual to do anything out of fear or say something like a raise or termination at a job or securing fame and status based on promises, and 2, while you could use the experience someone has in regards of age as an argument for being emotionally manipulative, this simply could not have happened in the short moments these people knew each other.
I eventually had to stand up after many minutes for it to stop. I was scared to leave or make a scene out of the embarrassment.
Some people may use her argument and say she didn't want to move because she didn't want to embarrass him or lose respect, while with all of these other influencers as a case of power imbalance influencing her decisions. But the thing is, Katie is an individual who at any time could have left, especially knowing per her statements the rest of her friends had left earlier than she did. At that point, it was entirely her volition, her choice to be there. As it also was to be drinking, something that she continuously insinuated to be done in a predatory or opportunistic fashion. The thing is that again, this is entirely her choice, her actions. She could have refused to stop drinking at any time, but it is abundantly clear that this is something that she wanted to partake in. Especially looking back on the GeorgeNotFound video and in regards to some of the conversations they had. This particular instance, for example, she seems excited to be drinking, partying, clubbing in the British way. Keep in mind, most clubs and bars, at least in Western countries like the USA, England, Canada, Spain, Ireland, have a minimum age requirement of 18 or 21, so she was 100% living it up as much as she could as an adult. Automatically, this invalidates all of the insinuations that she was coerced or egged on through peer pressure into drinking more. Not to mention how despite being 18, she was clearly getting into 21 only venues as shown in a picture of her wearing an age identifying wristband. This means you clearly had the intent and the means, whether it be a fake ID or connection, to be getting into these places. Some childish Twitter users out there will reprimand George for giving alcohol to a minor, but the thing is, 18 is the legal age of substance use in many countries outside of North America. She was also previously drinking without any incentives, and it's hypocritical to assume George gave her anything to drink when it's also abundantly clear that her friends weren't great peers either if they as a group were there specifically to party, club, and go to bars. This brings me back to the wristband. While the first photograph is claimed to not be her, she goes back on to say that she did end up using one of her friend's wristbands to get past the age checks in place, only further cementing the fact that she did all of this intentionally. Sure, it may not have been one to drink, but regardless of the fact, you went out of your way to present yourself as an adult. The entire language used in these statements is just incredibly inconsistent and backwards. You're asking for wristbands, but you're claiming to be underaged, so are you asking for drinking wristbands too? Because you can't legally be underage if you're 18. The age requirement to get into this party per your statement. So which one is it? Was your intent to drink or not? Regardless of the fact, you're still an adult making adult decisions. Remember everyone, 18 is still the legal drinking age in England. Some places just use additional age barriers to further deter those using fake 18 plus IDs as a sort of safety buffer. I also want to mention just how bullshit her claims towards sexual harassment are in general. You allowed this person to touch up on you for nearly an hour or so, it's been said. Throughout that entire period, you claimed that you felt too nervous to leave out of fear to embarrass George. Despite that, when he did touch you, you said you coughed no in an attempt to deter him. This is a bullshit excuse because at the same time, in screenshots that you took when communicating with other people, it's clear your friends are concerned, but if your replies are anything to go by, it appears that you yourself did not want to do anything to stop his advances. So which is it? Did you or did you not want to be present during that situation? I understand very well that silence does not equal consent and that someone should not make advances towards you unprompted, but at the same time, regret does not equal assault. Something that I should be really clear about as well is that anyone who is literally not a closeted loser with no real life experience or has lived in the real world beyond parasocial relationships and ideations of what life should be through Twitter optics is that in general, in real life, when you're with someone in a romantic setting, consent is typically given by advancements and reciprocation. Verbally asking someone to do anything is just not something that anyone does when you're being practical. Before anyone takes this as an argument for avoiding consent, this is not what this is at all. Most functioning adults consent simply by body language and making advancements towards each other. If you want to be someone who is always asking for consent and requires consent to be given verbally, that's fine. More power to the people who do this. At this point, this argument is just being pedantic for the sake of adding more fuel to the fire when it comes to painting George as an assaulter. Which brings me to my last sub-point to this section, a brief cross-reference for all of her statements, and by that I mean that I'm going to pick at inconsistencies in her final statement, and by that I mean that her story completely changed up. As we all know, in her initial statement, she read off everything she could remember that she wrote down on her notes in vivid detail. The claims were that George was touchy with her, he said his hand went up her shirt, asked if she was ticklish, and touched her bare stomach. This is the story we have been going off the whole time, along with the fact that a few people were there to witness that George was cuddling up to her and touching her. But now, as of her new statement, the story has changed drastically. She had changed the details from a fully written, excessively detailed series of emotionally charged events to a belligerent, angry rant about George not just touching her stomach, but fondling her breasts.
The one biggest thing that I want to clear up, it is fucking sexual assault, okay? I'm not going to apologize, say that it isn't sexual assault, that I'm not a sexual assault victim. The touching that he has admitted to many times, this touching that he admitted to not asking or getting my consent before he did, he felt up my tits on a couch with other people there.
Look, I'm not denying the fact that this could have happened, as according to George's own statements, he did put his hand further up her shirt over the course of an hour, very slowly. I'm not denying that this is a possibility because clearly this can be corroborated, but why wait until now to provide such drastic and critical details? Why withhold this information for nearly 3 weeks? The way that this comes across to me is that she realizes her story is falling apart, her support is dwindling, and that the public court of opinion overall when it comes to big commentators creators on the scene are absolutely ripping into her story, and it's obvious the way she continuously refuses to acknowledge her discrepancies and complains about the fact that people are asking her to apologize, and then doubles down by saying that now instead of touching her stomach, he fondled her breast. It's obvious to me that she's trying to find a way out of this hole that she dug herself. She revealed these intense details now, almost strategically hoping that people would take this as a turning point against George. Clearly this isn't working in her favor. To me, it's clear that the turning point is her intention, as she vehemently says that she was sexually assaulted regardless of what anyone else says. That being said, I want to move on to my overall criticism of Caitibugzz as a person, using this entire discourse as a judgment of character. That first segment just then was me pointing out how she specifically changes details at her convenience for the sake of painting a narrative, but I want to point out the manipulative, calculated deceptiveness and backwardness of her character. Something that everyone and their moms can pick up on when it comes to accusations or presentation of drama intended to negatively impact someone is the use of these following behavioral tactics: loaded language, performative behavior, and obscurity. First, let's start with Caitibugz's use of loaded language. Throughout the first VOD, something she mentions consistently is her age, the fact that she was freshly 18, and for that reason, it is somehow even more wrong for two adults at a party who knew nothing of each other to be interacting in a way that most adults looking to socialize typically do. The emphasis of being freshly 18, or as she goes on to correct in her second VOD, freshly out of high school while being 18, is something that she specifically uses to infantilize herself to make people feel that she is a lot more vulnerable and easy to coerce or manipulate, similar to that of a child, but as we know, this just isn't possible in the brief hours that these two people knew each other. A part that I want to focus on right here as an extension on my previous statement is when she says this, that she used to watch this person, and he was 8 years older and far more powerful, an attempt to showcase that this individual has influence over her and power over her, when again, this is simply just not the case. You didn't know each other outside of your parasocial relationship with him. This was yet another attempt to seemingly paint George as someone who could have forced her to do nefarious things using his influence, which becomes clear he couldn't, because later on, you kept rejecting him on Instagram.
I was scared and I felt sick, either from the alcohol or from his touch. It didn't matter because my mind was a blur.
At one point, when she also mentions that she felt scared and sick either from the alcohol or his touch, here it can be inferred that she is just further dramatizing the situation at hand, but isn't concise to say which of the two things definitively made her feel sick. It is a play at making the viewer's emotions take the wheel in how they want to perceive the situation. At this point, she wants to superimpose her artificial disgust on the emotions of the viewer. She wants the viewers to assume in bad faith that George touching her was what made her feel sick. The way she essentially scripted and wrote her notes to read out in her first livestream using sentences such as "I dread the scenarios that could have played out that night" suggests that she is hoping that other people too would be scared for her and sympathize more, while also alluding to the fact that the people around her, or even maybe George himself, are individuals who are dangerous and risky to be with.
Eventually, later in the night, I found myself alone with him and his friend. Everyone else either passed out or sick. I dread the scenarios that could have played out that night. The what ifs. I was just so naive.
These are just a few examples out of many. Examples which are also meant to further be drilled into the consciousness of the viewer who she is trying to leech sympathy from using performative behavior. Back to an example I used when she says George was 8 years older and powerful, the way she breaks down is used as a method to incentivize fear for this individual and more sympathy from the viewer. Back to her feeling sick. When she says that line, we can also see the way she makes her voice tremble along with a deep sigh as she is finishing this line in her notes. This is something she does actively in combination with segments of her first VOD where she's building up the situation or the negatives of a person with equally loaded language.
Hi chat. I wanted to talk to you guys about something today. I apologize. Because it'll probably be a bit hard.
Less than 3.
It's really hard for me to talk about, but I feel like it's important for other people to hear it. I'm sorry, I'm scared. And he was 8 years older than me, and far more powerful. I eventually had to stand up after many minutes for it to stop.
In her second VOD, her energy changes drastically. Instead of a melancholic attitude, she comes in far more energetic and seemingly angry while presenting information that wasn't seen or mentioned by anyone else before. The story now changes from George touched my stomach to because of what he references, because of what he admitted to, I can say that he meant he touched up my breast and therefore sexually assaulted me. All the while still pushing the, guys, I'm 18 years old, I'm still a child, please treat me as if I were taken advantage of narrative.
It is fucking sexual assault, okay? I'm not gonna apologize, say that it isn't sexual assault, that I'm not a sexual assault victim. The touching that he has admitted to many times, this touching that he admitted to not asking or getting my consent before he did, he felt up my tits on a couch with other people there. He stuck his hand up my shirt, under my bra, and felt up, fondled, whatever you want to say. He felt up my tits. Unwanted sexual touch is literally in the definition of sexual assault. It's fucking sexual assault, and I'm never gonna apologize for saying it is, okay? It isn't fake allegations. It's not fake allegations. I'm not a liar. Quite literally, the thing that I was talking about is my sexual assault, and that's the one thing he confirmed. He can sit there and confirm that he did it. And I'm still sat here getting called a liar, getting called a fake victim, getting called, what was it? A slut and a prude at the same time. And quite frankly, it's fucking ridiculous. I'm not gonna stand down. Luckily, I'm not scared to say it anymore. That's it. It's sexual assault. He felt up my tits. This touching that he's talking about, that's what it is, okay? No, I'm not upset that he tickled me. I'm not saying that he assaulted me because he tickled me or because he was close to me. No, I'm upset because I was on a couch, 18 years old, drunk, on a couch with other people in the room, and he sticks up his hand and starts feeling my tits. That was my fucking story.
But the thing is that George never actually admitted to doing this. Sure, it can be corroborated, as I mentioned earlier. It is entirely possible that this happened. I don't think anyone could deny this in good faith, but you're insinuating that he admitted to this when he did not. It's manipulative to say this. It's incredibly disingenuous and loaded to say things like this because now you're just hoping to invoke that people believe more things he may or may not have done. This is not really that important to the extent of this entire video that I'm making here, but I also want to point out the exaggerated expressions she makes in this VOD. It's as if every word and sentence she makes is followed by some twitch, blink, nod, shake. Lots of TikTokerisms, if I do say so myself. But anyways, I want to move on to my next point, which is infantilization. Caitibugzz has this strange habit of wanting to be between two worlds, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. She made this entire vlog where she is just happy to finally be 18, to finally turn into a legal adult, and according to some of these DMs and clips, it appears she is also extremely excited and happy to be participating in the adult life. Clubbing, drinking, partying, taking shots with friends, bar hopping, it's all something she not just mentions to be excited she's participating in, but she made vlogs to celebrate the fact that she was doing adult things. Yet, regardless of that, she also still wants to be treated as if she were a child. Pulling up one of her card pages, which is one of those websites where you can express who you are, essentially, it highlights just all of that. General PSA, just because Katie isn't a minor, that doesn't mean you should sexualize her. That's fair, 100%, but again, you're not a minor. If you accept this by any means, you shouldn't be using your age as a crux to make sexual assault appear more horrific for the sake of pity. I should mention that this was also updated back in September 2023, so by this point in time, she is fully aware that she is not a minor by any means. She's an adult. And despite this, she directly contradicts herself in the same card. Don't baby her. So which is it? Do you want people to feel responsible for your vulnerability or not? Do you want people to see you as someone to protect like an innocent teenager, or are you an adult capable of making your own decisions? You absolutely can be one, but you can't be the other. As a matter of fact, this entire card is something that was made especially to highlight just how uncomfortable she is with a large list of things and behaviors. She doesn't like boundary crossing jokes. She is very quick to block things out that make her uncomfortable. She doesn't like when people make her look bad, and overall, it appears that her entire personality and construct of herself is based on actions created on internet spaces such as YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. She loves the admiration she gets and the attention she gets, but only under certain circumstances and conditions. This leads a bunch of other people and I to believe just one thing to be true about her. She's probably an incredibly sheltered individual who has never been exposed to the realities of the world. Everything she knows is carefully curated and filtered for her, which explains why when she's in a perfectly natural situation that millions upon millions of people go through every day, her response is to be extremely intimidated and set off by it. To you, it may be sexual assault, but by any ounce of normalcy, it simply isn't. If you felt uncomfortable during the entire situation, your first reaction should be self-preservation. Either leave the person who is making you feel uncomfortable, if he did, or tell him to stop bothering you, which comes into question seeing the way you reacted to it the following day when you were questioned by your friends about it. Per your statements, you didn't even know if it was a big deal or not. You had to ponder on it to come to a conclusion, and you didn't even feel like doing anything about it. Again, while silence does not equal consent, it is clear that at the moment, per your words, you had no particular interest or disinterest in the moment. It was only a significantly long time after the fact that you came to the conclusion that this was sexual assault over some sort of power imbalance. And again, regret does not mean sexual assault. Which leads me into my final thoughts about all of this. This is all just my personal opinion, but to several people, including me, it appears that Katie saw a bunch of people spitting allegations out with significant support and no strong defenses. As in the case of Wilbur Soot, that dude just completely crumbled and got eaten apart by Twitter. This was probably a very open opportunity for Katie to come in and tell her story with a recontextualized and dramatic telling of events to absolutely crumble GeorgeNotFound in the same way, which he did, and also on top of that, profit and gain from the negative air in the Minecraft community. Following these allegations, you got a monumentous amount of support, as well as a spike to your channel, Twitch, and social medias, while George got absolutely tanked. If your goal was to manipulate this entire situation and ambiance of support all victims to gain recognition and support for yourself, then congratulations, you succeeded, at the very well-known cost of another person's career, potentially that is, because despite his brandings being shattered and support temporarily fractured, I think George is getting enough vindication from the overall community to keep him on stable footing. If your goal wasn't to further increase the scrutiny at which victims and people that speak out get held up to, then I'm sorry to say that that is exactly what will keep happening and get significantly more harsh and judgmental moving forwards. Situations and stories like these that dramatize and corrupt petty quarrels are the same ones that desensitize and draw attention away from potentially real victims that become even more and more afraid to speak out about their trauma because of people who will hold their story up to a microscope, such as me and other commentators. I can't say I'm innocent in drama farming, I'm not, but when it comes to these types of scandals, it is important to point out the inconsistencies and negatives of falsifying narratives to detract from someone else, cost them their careers, just to bolster yours. To be absolute, situations like these, more specifically yours, Caitibugzz, is one that should have been talked about and resolved privately. If both of you came to a mature and responsible conclusion, none of you would have had to struggle through the scrutiny and flame war that is internet drama. If George decided that he wasn't going to properly amend whatever conflict he caused with you, then at that point you would have been significantly more justified in coming out with a more concise and information-backed story, along with potential receipts showing that he wasn't willing to cooperate. But instead, you decided to take the route that would only create more problems for the both of you. All of that being said, let all of this be something to reflect on for future reference of what creates someone that is more than likely using a series of events opportunistically to not just retaliate against someone, but also gain from their potential downfall. Thanks for watching. Love you all. Later.